Hello and welcome to the David Eames On Your Mind podcast. As usual, I'm joined by the wonderful, beautiful Mikey and the even more beautiful Owen Oxley, who doesn't need just for men on his beard at all. We're back on the bus for a bit of a change today, and today we're going to be talking about trust. Mikey, do people have to earn your trust?
Yeah, completely. I like that. Trust is earned because I've had so many times. One instant actually was a friend from school, and we just built up a bit of a fun friendship, known each other through partying and that kind of scene. But one time, he'd got a drug addiction basically, and he was like, "Oh mate, I'm having a party on the weekend. We're gonna have consoles and games there. Can I borrow some of your equipment?" So I give him my Wii, my Xbox, everything that I had nearly, and he sold them. And he sold them to pay off his drug addiction and his drug debt.
Mm-hmm. Who's he selling a weed to? You're not getting much for that.
Mate, well, it's back in the day.
Was it a while ago?
Yeah, it was back.
Right.
I'm 17 at this point, so it just come out there at that time. But yeah, he sold all my consoles so that he could, or either he'd not sold them. I think he'd just give them to that guy as a payment.
Okay.
But it's this big scary drug dealer that's got it. You're gonna have to go and speak to him if you want them back. Uh-huh. I'm like, I think I've lost them then.
Yeah.
They've gone.
So that was a good moment, really, quite an affirming moment of, I realise how people are willing to people that you think are your best friends and people that you consider as that, because you've not done maybe enough thorough checking or not had a situation like that emerge, that it made me a little bit more choosy and picky about who I had in my life and wanting to immerse myself in. So from that moment, I've not been really sheltered and protective and trying not to make friendships, but I was definitely very thoughtful and considerate about who I had in my world. So yeah, it's earned for me.
Okay. Owen, what about people you care about? Do you trust them?
It all depends.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can care about people in many different ways, to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, they need to be at an arm's length relation, perhaps. And other people they can be in bed with you. And it's interesting what you were saying about earning trust. I'm a big believer in most people, or nearly all people, get my trust immediately. It's if they lose it, they will never get it back. And I think that's a bit more important for me because I'm a bit older than Mikey as well, and I think age is that type of thing. It seasons you to so many things, so much damage and trauma that you've been through, that essentially if you can take a lesson from it, trust is a big one in that. And that's where you get these red flags or these little flags that crop up that you think, hold on a minute, been down this road before. And it's really difficult because there is normally a reason why someone could have let you down, or for whatever it is. It could be drug dealing, it could be anxiety, it could be whatever. But I always think that talking is the best way. And I'd like to think if you've got trust with someone and a good relationship with someone, it's never a problem to talk. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as it can be and as awkward it could be. I had a friend that was one of my closest friends when I was at Egg. And when we were getting married, I've got a really big family, and so Stace.
Can you just move your mic a little bit back away from me? Yeah, it's like...
Is it a bit boomy?
Yeah,
sound like David.
Your peas were coming off, not very...
Sorry, dude.
Mind your peas, mate.
Yeah. I will. A really good friend, and we only had one place at our wedding for the day do that wasn't family. And between me and Stacey, we decided on this person. It was really important that he was there. And it took me to call him on the morning of the wedding for him to then completely let me down and be like, oh, yeah, and all these excuses and other things. And it was a really important thing to us. We really wanted him there. And it was a case that I understood afterwards there was whatever issues, but there was no forethought. And it, like, even when you look at how much it cost us for the meal and the accommodation, all the other shit that we're taking care of, it was a big letdown. But I kind of let that slide slightly because of how much he meant to me. And then I can remember picking him up in my van once. I had an old banged out van. And at the time, well, he was always quite a vain person, but we knew that was fine. And we pulled up at work. I saw him walking to work, so I swung in, double backed, picked him up to take him so he didn't have to walk. And as we pulled in, he said, mate, do you mind pulling up like 100 metres away from work so I can just walk in? I said, what for? He says, I don't really want to be seen in the van. And I was like, well, so it's all right for you to be in it. It's good for the lift, but
you don't want to be seen
you're embarrassed.
with me.
So I locked the doors and turned the music on full blast so that when we went in, everyone definitely saw him. And it was just one of them where I was like, I always thought this guy had my back. I always thought it was a two-way thing, and it was definitely not. And it's those lessons that then it's now blacklisted.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't think I've answered your question. But
Well, it kind of in a way, I think, because I kind of disagree with you, Mark. I know I kind of set you up a bit, really, with the.
You always do that, mate. Yeah.
Do you have to?
Are you racist?
Well, we established that you are.
Yes.
So, but does trust have to be earned?
Yeah.
Because I think a good policy is to give trust freely, but it can be lost.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, there's a limit to it because again, it's about managing your own boundaries. So obviously, confidentiality is very important for me in the counselling work that I do. So I don't ask for someone else to be trusted with information that I shouldn't be trusting them with.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
precisely.
Because once you share a secret with someone else, it's no longer a secret. You've lost control of the information.
Yeah,
So this is the other thing: is how do you get people to trust you? Be trustworthy. Because as you know, the examples that you give out, it only takes, or Andrew with the consoles, it only takes one moment to ruin a lifetime's worth of trust, and
Yeah.
it can be a long
Yeah.
road back again.
but it's a strange Jenga tower because the thing is, it could be the best thing ever, and then all of a sudden it takes that one brick, and it's
In a moment of desperation as well.
Yeah, and they could have
People-
spoke to you, and if they'd have spoke
Yeah.
to you, it would have been uncomfortable and awkward. But at the same time, they're still going to have to talk to you after the fact. That makes sense. So it seems like, well, look, it's going to be awkward after.
But crazy as well, because I am one of those people that would have just let them do it as well. At the time, I would have said, "Yeah, mate, if you're in that much trouble
What do you
and
need?"
we're concerned, let's do it."
Yeah.
I'm the same.
I've got nuance to that now, but really, if it's somebody I really love and I want to help, we'll get through it 100% because that's what I want for them.
The other thing that's a danger for us is that when we're withdrawing trust because we misinterpret things, and if we're a bit insecure in our relationships, we've talked in previous podcasts about attachment styles. If you've got that avoidant attachment style and the belief that people are going to let you down, often we can misinterpret information.
Yeah.
Oh, they've not answered my text. They must be up to something.
Yeah.
And I find this is a big problem with a lot of my clients is that they're almost conducting surveillance operations on their partners.
Yeah.
Because they think they must be up to something. And the thing is that the surveillance never satisfies.
No.
Because people think they've just not looked hard enough.
Yeah.
Because you're telling yourself when you're checking up on someone all the time that there's something to be found, aren't you?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, which is an important concept, and the thing you think about it, Mikey, is trust is a choice. It's not something that just happens. It's not, in a way, something that someone earns, in as much it's outside of your control. It's you choose whether or not to invest your trust in someone. What do you think to that idea?
I like that idea. Yeah, I like the power that it gives you in having a choice. I just had a thought in that though, and it's recent context for a friend of mine. He probably doesn't listen to this, so I'll say it. But there'd been that element of trust that they'd had. What do you do in the relationship? Like, she did snoop, but then that trust was broken because there was some validity to it.
Yeah.
How hard's that to regain then? And
Well, again, I've worked through that with clients with, they've dealt with a partner that has gone over the side.
yeah,
And the first choice is, can you choose to forgive that? Okay, that other person.
this all sounds quite empowering. I like the
It is, and it's that that if you're waiting for forgiveness to fall from heaven, it ain't ever going to happen.
No.
And it's a way of letting go of that pain through or you may think, no, that's a betrayal I can't forgive, and then the relationship is over, and that's a legitimate choice to make. But this whole thing about hanging on to bitterness, there's a saying from St. Augustine, which I love, I've quoted it before, I think, is that bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Precisely.
yeah.
And that's the big problem, because it's like flogging a dead horse, isn't it? If you know that if someone ever did do you wrong, and ultimately the end outcome would be that's it, you go your separate ways. There's no point in arguing about it for 3 months or 3 years or 30 years or whatever it is.
I've been in friendship circles and groups where that's been the case, and then you just every so often hear these jibes being thrown at them and attacks, and you know what it insinuating, and nobody speaks about it. But I'm like, that must be so uncomfortable to feel all the time, where we're having a conversation and this passive-aggressive sniper rifle is just being thrown out every so often.
Yeah.
Really, you're seething inside, and you're waiting for your moment to say, yeah, like the time you did it, and it's like, oh, you don't want to live like that.
No.
The problem is, trust is one thing, but disappointment is such a big emotion that's attached to it for me, because the problem is, sometimes people can do stuff and let you down in such a way that then you feel that they don't seem that they're that bothered about it. So unfortunately, you need to emphasize the fact and hammer it home to say, oh no, I need you to be as uncomfortable as you've made me.
Yeah, that's it. You feel that there needs to be retribution.
It's a justification of being a prick, and I do it all the time because I can get frustrated, and because someone will be a bit flippant with it, I'll think, oh okay, no worries. You're going to hate this next fucking hour. Do you know what I mean? And then I feel, afterwards, it's not the best. But at the same time, it is trying to own it to go, do you know what? I'll file that one away as finished. Yeah. But your privileges have essentially been revoked.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. I mean, I'll never forget, we used to always have parties at our house, and we'd have 2 gazebos up. And it was one of them where it was a good setup, really good, pop-up gazebos, cost me quite a bit of money back in the day. And my sister said to me one year, it's a partner at the time, it's his birthday. Could you bring the setup round? I said, yeah, of course I can. No problem at all. So me and my other mate, Charnica, went round, we set it all up. I said, don't take it down. I'll come in the morning, I'll sort it out for you. She's like, yeah, no problem. So next minute, I was working on our own house with my dad. And my sister rings me and was like, we've put it all away, we're going to drop it off because we're going out now. And so I was like, yeah, no problem. No worries. I didn't want you to because it's weird. It's a pop-up gazebo. So as much as it's very easy, it's even easier to break when you go against a mechanism, if that makes sense. And he brought it down the garden to me, passed it to me and started to walk off. Which, just sent off complete suspicion.
Well, that's a sin. I'm going to struggle to forgive that or trust you ever again.
Yeah. It's a shitty Samsung. So he just passed it to me and walked off. And that was not like him. And obviously my Vera mode engaged.
Spidey senses.
And I just unzipped it and looked in the top, and it was like it had been put away with the JCB.
Oh, mate.
So I just sort of went, what's this? He was like, and didn't have an answer.
Really?
Hadn't even planned an answer.
Tried to get through it.
And the thing is...
What did you think was going to happen? Or if he got out the
even
vicinity
6 months later when I go to use it, it's like, well, in the shed it must have just broke itself.
It's such a childish act.
I hate it. And
quite funny, but not
I'm
good.
the type of person that they say, this happened, and I'm like, cool, well, as and when you replace it. Because our rule is, if you break it, you replace it. It's always been the same. So my sister then rang me and was like, I found one big gazebo instead of 2 little ones. Can I buy you the big one and then you have the little one? I was like, oh, no. I want you to replace it with what you... Bawling her eyes out, ringing my dad, trying to get him involved. And I'm like, dude, look, I'm not being a dick. She borrowed it. If I said, if you break it, you replace it. So then next minute she came and just dropped off and didn't even stop. And went. And I was like... And then I was the bad guy. I'm like, hold on a minute. You broke it. Like, just man up. Or talk to me. Just talk to me. And it's like, even if you can't pay for it now, we'll work something out. But the thing is, you can't borrow shit and then just completely destroy it and then be like, oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, you can break it and maybe not replace it, but at least fess up to it. That's a very basic level, isn't it, of saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's done. But the other thing is, when someone says sorry, often people will respond with, well, that's not enough. It's maybe with a non-physical act, an emotional pain.
Yeah.
They want the new gazebo.
I was going to say context is key here, isn't it?
Yeah. But some people die for sorry, and other people, I know some people that cannot say it. Whereas I will say it and I'll mean it, but because they seem to think I say it easily, they're like, well, you can. It's not a problem for you. You can say it dead easy. I'm like, well, I still mean it.
On a Friday night gaming, I will say it and not mean it.
Every day, every week, and it's getting even less.
There's probably 2 ends to a spectrum here, if you know what I mean, because I think there's some people that overuse sorry. It'd be like if you've got a fence that they keep breaking and kicking a ball at something and it keeps snapping it, and then you just use sorry as your mechanism, and it's like, that's okay, sorted, do it again. There's a moment where it does lose its meaning, but there does have to be retribution for people that genuinely mean it and have come to see brought a gazebo back and said, I'm really sorry this has happened. That the context there is key, and they do mean it. But I think that for the people that are sinning or doing something against, they need to know that sorry is a powerful word and it needs to be respected.
Yeah, but I think, the thrust of this I'm getting at is the choices that we have to make. So the whole thing about trust is something you choose to do or not do.
Yeah.
Because it's quite legitimate to choose someone. You can like someone, but limit the extent of the trust that you have in them. Mikey, as I've said, I'll not trust you to arrive on time for something.
Valid.
If it's something, if something that absolutely has to start at a particular time, I'll probably give you. No, we're going to start.
Tell me at a different.
Yeah. But and again, that's not disliking in any way. It's just that's the way some people operate.
That'll be the 1 week where I'm an hour early.
For me, it's a painful thing to be a minute late.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, it really. But that's the way I was sort of wired through childhood.
Yeah, and that's a big core thing.
One of my clients, if they're 10 seconds late joining a call, I start worrying about them.
Yeah,
because they are so on it.
Yeah.
But I think some people don't even get past stage one.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even register for trust. You can be around them, you can associate with them, you can have them in your life, but it is definitely an arm's length sort of deal, because they've given you so much evidence that you can allocate to experiences in your own life to go, even when they're telling you a story, they could be boasting about it. They go, oh, yeah, well, I broke my mate's gazebo, I didn't even care. And you think, okay, that's a flag. But it doesn't mean that you don't now have to have anything to do with them.
Yeah.
It's just, you're not even, it's like on the Meet the Fockers, the inner circle. You're not going to get anywhere near the inner circle.
Yeah.
And there's also levels to the inner circle as well, because if Stace would have broken the gazebo, I'd have just gone, righto.
Like,
what are you going to
like
do?
you two talk about, I've got a mate that I could bury somebody with if ever needed that moment.
It is, yeah.
The trust is there, but I don't think there's anybody else on the planet that I've got that relationship with. Yeah. And the reason I love him so much is because I've got that feeling of trust.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful, and I think that is the beauty of it. But you don't want that with everybody, do you?
You can't have that.
You can't have that with everybody.
The problem is, it's like a drug that's you. Lots of people like the smell of cocaine. Some people like the smell of it a bit too much.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so a bit too much of it is too much for them. But the little bit they can handle. And it's the same with like, I feel quite privileged to have friends that I've only got a handful of really close friends, and a couple that would bury the body with me. But it can't be all of them, and I think it's a strange feeling, because it's a bit like when we were talking about speaking, like doing public speaking. It's a really weird thing, because I am very fortunate to know what it's like to have someone that's got my back. It must be really lonely and really dark and really scary to not have anyone that's just, you've been consistently let down. Either by systems or by people or by whatever it is. And you can see how it can twist people's brain and send them into absolute turmoil. Because sometimes it just takes one phone call to one of my friends to be able to go, I need to empty my brain. And I just, but out it comes. And then all of a sudden, Friday night, you get it all in your ear. Saturday morning, I wake up and I'm 25% better. But
it's
25% away from the red line.
Yeah.
Whereas if you haven't got that, that's the fear.
But it's all, again, the choice thing is all about maintaining your own boundaries in this. So trusting is one thing, actively mistrusting is a different one. I think I don't mistrust anyone in as much as there's a limit to the trust that I will give.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a positive. But the other thing is, even people like the guys around this table who I trust a great deal, it's not that there's something I won't trust, it's something I won't ask of you.
Yeah.
Because that might be betraying your own personal principles in some way. So it's very unlikely, because we share a lot of these principles.
Yeah.
But say asking one of you to do something that might do harm to my dog or my wife or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I know you wouldn't do it, and it would be wrong to say you'd let me down then.
Yeah.
So part of trust. It's a relationship thing, isn't it? It's an essential part of a relationship. It's about not transgressing on that trust in either direction, either letting the other person down or almost inviting them to let you down by asking them too much.
Yeah, too much of them.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And there's also you can get trappy people. I've found people who are desperate not to be offended or something, but like desperate to try and catch you out because you've. I can remember speaking to someone even when I was at Thornton's, quite young, and I say, "Oh yeah, I got this, and we're really close with it." Oh yeah, but I bet if this happened, and I bet if that. We're desperate to unpick the stitching that I've been creating for the past however many years, and they're like, "Yeah, but." Well, what if it was this? And you're like, fucking hell, man. How many daddy issues have you got, bro? And they were just desperate for it because it wasn't working for them. They needed for it to not work for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that was kind of, it was a bit more...
Made sense, but you went on the other side of the mic again. So if you could move it back...
It was disappointing. It's because you've got a twisted mic, Mike.
There we go.
But it doesn't dodge you.
Well, look, I've got... It's one of these.
Yeah, twisted, but not moving.
No. So, yeah, I think it's... Yeah, human nature's a funny thing. And trust is so core for me.
I like your analogy. Is it on Gangs of New York about trust, where they've...
With the money?
You tell that
That's
just because it's so good.
Once Upon a Time in New York.
Right.
And that's a lesson that I hold really dear. If
I
could get it condensed into a tattoo, I probably would.
Mate,
it's too long.
This is something you spoke to me on our first podcast together. Okay. I've never forgot it, and it would change my answer at the start if we'd had this conversation, and this kind of suits it a little bit more.
Thought for a second long and not just finished a podcast.
Yeah, because the context, again, I wouldn't let somebody just look after my kid or anything, but giving somebody an Xbox again, I probably would do, because this would showcase who they are.
Basically, I'm sure it's Once Upon a Time in New York. Me and you spoke about this a number of times, and it comes down to the currency in life, and not just physical currency, but essentially there's the young gangsters that are in the movie are the kids, and they see one of the other toe rags running in front of them. They're about to go and start chasing him, and one of the mafia bosses sort of stops them a little bit. This is what you're doing, lads. And they're like, oh, it's such and such. He owes us some money. He's a scumbag. And they're like, oh, and he just, all right, slow down. What? Your phone's ringing.
Dear oh Lord.
He says,
what a crew.
He says, all right, how much does he owe you? And he's like, oh, he owes us $1. And he's like, how often does he borrow it? And he's like, every week. And how hard is it to get it off him? It's a nightmare. It's always a nightmare. And then he wants to borrow it again. And they're like, okay. How much has he asked to borrow off you since he owes you this $1? And they're like, oh, he hasn't asked at all. He just avoids us. He's like, cool. So it's cost you $1 to keep him out of your life. And it just fucking struck such a chord that I was like, yo. That because it feels like such a principle thing, like, oh, you owe me this. But actually, in the reality, you're like, oh, man, this is a blessing because I don't have to deal with this shit anymore.
That does metaphorize this conversation, really, doesn't it? Metaphorize is a word.
Metaphorize?
I type it in. I said it the other day, and I thought that can't be a word. And I typed it in, and it is. 100%.
Okay. Is it the mighty?
I saw his face
Power
go, and I
Rangers?
was like, I know that's actually a word, so I feel empowered now.
Mikey, I trust you.
He's gonna Google it.
Yeah.
Trust you on the podcast. Yeah.
Trusting doesn't necessarily mean you don't check.
Yeah.
You know, by the time it gets to 10 o'clock tonight and we're on PlayStation, the first word he's going to say to me is metaphorizing, and I'll be like, what?
I can't wait.
A couple of beers.
It might be an American word now. But
it might be, yeah. And if it is a word, it's inelegant, isn't it?
I like it. Metaphorize.
Anyway, we're kind of getting off the topic. I want to talk a bit about male jealousy and how that responds to trust, okay?
Because we're male.
Yeah, we are. But I see it again a lot with my male clients where they worry about their women getting comments from other men.
Quite...
And I think the trouble is they think that female sexuality is like male sexuality. So an experiment has been repeated many times in different contexts, different cultures. If you get a young lady to go up to guys randomly and say, hey, I like the look of you, can we meet and sleep together tonight? 60% of men say yes, and the other 40% say no, but apologise for saying no. If you reverse the sexes, 0% of women say yes, and none of them apologise for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the whole thing about, like gay men, they appear to be a bit profligate, sexually. That's not a gay thing. It's a man thing.
Yeah.
If women had the same attitude towards sex that men have, we'd all be cottaging. People would be doing it in the street.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be like monkeys in the zoo. It'd never stop.
Yeah.
We are like that.
And men get jealous, I think, of the woman. Think, if some man pays her some attention, she's going to go with him, whereas she's probably just going to fuck off.
Yeah. I think what blows men's mind, I can speak from my own experience, is I haven't got the key to the cupboard, and my wife has. And it's like, because if it was me, the cupboard would always be open, and we'd never get anything done. But for them, they're like, I think now's okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe now, and you're like,
maybe now.
Why do you not think the same as me? Do you know what I mean? And it's
we will do another podcast sometimes about sex differential, which is
it's massive.
It just made me think of a story. You know that the Tory cabinet minister Nicholas Soames, who was a big fella, had an affair, and the woman writing about the affair saying having sex with him was like having a wardrobe fall on her with a really small key in the lock. It's not really relevant.
I bet you got that framed.
Yeah, not relevant, but needed to say it, and I'm glad you did.
But I think if you can get on that level of understanding, then the insecurity is a lot different.
Yeah,
because it's when you trust someone implicitly.
Yeah.
It's like when I had my trauma in Thailand with my massage.
Yeah.
Stace sent me to the masseuse, and then when I got back, she found it hilarious that she'd been pressing me and saying, "Oh, do you want a bit extra?" And I was like, "No."
Oh my god!
I told you the story, didn't I?
Yeah.
I don't think I
on the
heard
podcast.
You like?
Oh yeah, you want?
You
Have I not told? I'm sure I told you.
Yeah. Okay.
But either way, she was the one who told me to go to that masseuse. And so when I got back and I told her what had happened, there wasn't a question of, so what did you do? Mm-hmm. But did you do anything? So what happened? It was more a case of, oh my God, you idiot. And she found it hilarious because I don't need to overly justify or explain, because I think sometimes as well in that, the more rope you give yourself, you seem so, if you go, well, at 3 minutes past 11, I said no, and then at 5 minutes past, she touched it, because you sound suspicious.
Having an alibi prepared is not...
Yeah, here's my brief.
It's like when you've been accused of a crime, saying, well, you can't prove that.
Yeah.
It's different from saying, I didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, it is a tricky one. It's really tricky.
How do you often work with those men through that situation if they're being honest about it?
Well, it's by encouraging them to trust, and it really works. So, the one client, there had actually been an event. It's actually gone on for quite some time, and the relationship was right on the edge. But he decided to persist with it, and he got, form himself as well. But over time, the relationship built, and it's by letting go of the pain, in a way, choosing to forgive and then choosing to trust.
Yeah.
The other person responds to that, and the relationship can be mended. If you don't trust someone anymore, the relationship cannot be mended. For those times when there has not been an actual event, then I've seen relationships destroyed by that lack of trust, and it's all down to the insecurity of the individual really not believing that anyone else can love them enough to be true to them.
What about a person talking to you now as a client who would be going, that's fine, David, but I've trust before, and then it's broken, and then I chose to trust again, and then it got broken. Yeah. I'd imagine you get a voice like that.
Yeah, you do. And I sometimes think, okay, if I'm helping someone to work through this, what happens if they get let down in the future? Am I responsible for that? And the answer is no, I'm not. Yeah. The person who lets them down is responsible.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And again, it's the whole thing, I've got a string of failed relationships behind me. Well, often you haven't. You had relationships that didn't last forever, but they weren't failed. And maybe they produced children, things like that. So they were successful relationships, but didn't go on forever.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, the problem is you can't prove a negative. You can never prove that someone is not going to let you down.
Exactly.
You can never prove that someone's not having an affair. You can never prove that someone's not cheating you. So trust is, in the end, the only choice to feel secure.
Yeah, and I think if you say those again to make them clear, because if someone's listening to this half-cocked and they go, well, you can prove that someone's having an affair, you're saying you can't prove a negative.
You can't prove that they're not having one.
Yeah, you can't prove that they're not having an affair.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
And that's sometimes where the spiralling comes in,
yeah.
Because if they haven't had the text reply within 10 seconds, or they've tracked your phone, or they've used whatever apps to watch.
And people misinterpret partial information.
Precise. And that was so key, because I'm listening to exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
but I'm also conscious I need to be getting on the road. So when you were saying it, I was thinking...
I'm keeping an eye on the time. You've got 2 minutes.
I completely agree with you. But when you said it, I was like, that needs to be emphasised.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. One of my friends once was cheated on and went out and said, so I went out and cheated on her.
Oh.
Yeah.
But they stayed together. And it was the worst relationship you've ever seen for the next year. And then all of a sudden they broke up. But you're like, how did it feel when you did it? He said it was horrible. And I was like, what were you thinking, mate? But
revenge is seldom useful.
Yeah, mate, it's not the best, is it? It's a scary thing, and I think it is all down to a bit of blind faith, isn't it?
It truly does lighten your load, doesn't it? Not having to feel that I bet they may be and constantly checking up.
Yeah.
To have that autonomy about your mind and free it and just thinking, well, I imagine they're fully honest with the way
that's
they're
right. You
being.
can't control your feelings, the feelings of doubt and pain and things like that. But if you control your thinking and your actions, the feelings will follow. So, fairly short podcast today because Owen's got to be away because someone in authority has breached his trust. He's going to go away and deal with that. But hopefully it's been helpful to think about it. Think about how you choose to act and how you choose to think. And maybe life will run a little bit more smoothly. Thank you. Goodbye.